Pounders, welcome back. Today, we're going to be diving into a little risers and fallers information, followed by some of your favorite analysis by Billy Jones. I'll ask if you guys enjoy the stream, hit the like, hit the sub, and let's dive into it. Billy, welcome to the live stream, my man. How are you doing? It's been a minute.
Yeah, right now it's in like the dog days of the summer, right? Well, for drafting, it's actually like the best time of the summer. Go and live in a life a little bit, but yeah, no, it's been a minute. Excited to be back as always, and we got like our ADP stuff, and I got something at the end which I think is interesting. It's not just data. Like I can do different type of analysis, and we got something that I think you guys will think is interesting.
This dude is ready for the best ball Olympics, multi-sport athlete here in the ways of thinking about best ball. But yeah, no, we've hit an information lull. So I've actually taken like a little 10-day break myself for the mental, because we know July and August are going to be an absolute grind. And I think I have around 400 to 500 teams left to draft, but we're getting fun contests. We're getting the Pitbull, the $20. We're getting the Poodle, the $7 entry. So it's still making you draft, but we're not getting a ton of new information. How are you dealing with that right now?
Yeah, I mean the well done on Underdog in terms of the contest they're putting out right now. Got an interesting mix of things. Like I love Pitbull right now in that structure.
Yes,
a little bit of juice there. Also, you can get a couple entries, like 10 entries down, so it's not like you're just going to be like one and done and you're stuck with some random lotto in terms of the first round. 100K up top, so it's like in terms of we had talked about in the last fall, like contest selection and like picking the right ones to maximize bankroll but actually have a chance to win. Pitbull is like that exactly. 212, 1615, like love that. And then you do have like some juice behind this as well. You're putting $20 per draft, and if you can get the finals and win, like you're winning 100K. So I don't know. I'm obsessed with this tournament. Really like being particular with my bullets on this one compared to like some of the other ones that we have.
For sure. And a lot more money goes towards the top when you don't win anything for advancing into the playoff week. You just get your money back. So a lot of that money goes to the top, and it makes it a very thick prize pool. You even have 10% going to second place, which 10% is sometimes a first place prize. So 10% going to second and 5%, and the drop off isn't that steep. So a lot of money at the top 10 here, and even in the finals, 156 to make 25x. The money's pretty good, but I agree this contest is perfect. They dropped a few of these. They even dropped the Corgi, a single entry, which I have yet to do. Squeezing out every last bit of information we can, but let's jump into the risers and fallers on the week. These are not going to be stark drops and rises, although the Jonnu Smith to Pittsburgh news is relatively big for ADPs. But to start with risers, Dylan Sampson up 6 spots. I don't really know why. Like, you have people that are just like Jerome Ford people, right? And they're so convinced Jerome Ford's going to be the number 2 here. You have Judkins. It's multiple heads in a room that, is this team going to be having that many red zone drives?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't think there's a ton of news here. I think what is happening is, I don't know who to attribute it to, so I'm sorry if this is your take. I believe that there's someone that was like, this is not as ambiguous. This is more of an ambiguous backfield than giving Judkins like the number 1 guy early. And this is probably multiple people that have said that. And so I think Sampson has gotten a little bit of like fell off the map. And now people are like, maybe I'll draft him a little bit in case this isn't just like a Judkins backfield. I think that's what's happening. I don't know. It's not someone I'm targeting.
And we've made this argument before, right? Is like, what do you get when you're right and you guessed the RB2 in Cleveland? Like, what do you get? Especially if the RB1 gets hurt, that the RB3 is going to be heavily involved, no matter who it is of the three, right? So if you're right and it's Jerome Ford's the RB2 and there's an injury to Judkins and we think he can get that workhorse type role, Dylan Sampson will be involved. So I don't think there's a major winning factor here for the RB2 situation, personally.
Yeah, it's tough.
J.K. Dobbins, officially one pick ahead of where we have him ranked now. We called this one beautifully, where he would fly up to the 140s and he would trickle down to the 120s. He is officially here after a rocky start. People were worried all the way until around May 27th. He hits 194, which is kind of where you're seeing like Keenan Allen. And my God, the rise has been pretty amazing.
Quick and constant.
Let me pull up the range of where he's going for the other RBs around him. You have two in ahead of him. Spears and Ray Davis are behind him. And what I told my following exactly was I would rank him before those guys, right? Yes, behind them, but just know that he's going to eventually go ahead of them. And now we're officially there. Do you like Spears or Ray Davis better?
Yeah, I mean, I like Spears a lot. I kind of like the concept of him last year, not knowing what Tony Pollard was. But if Cam Ward is good, Tyler Spears could be good too. Like that could totally be, could facilitate two players. So I like him. Someone who I've been interested in for sure.
There's the proof. Expect Dobbins to fly up to 140s, rank him right behind Ray Day. This was on June 11th. Every now and then a squirrel finds a nut here. It's interesting, right? Because Coach Speak could fly Dobbins up even higher. But I'm sort of staying cautious right now around this range just because there still is multiple running backs in this backfield. So I'm just going to wait. Like I have a good amount of Dobbins too, like my 20% or something. I'm pretty high. I'm pretty high. So I'm at 20% at an average of 172. And you can find this as well on bestballoverlay.com. I believe this whole page is a free feature. So there's no reason to not at least make an account. And after that, it's just like, let me just get Spears. He's getting positive Coach Speak. Ray Davis, we know there's clear upside there with an injury to James Cook, and he has some standalone value as well. Then Dobbins, like, let's just see. Let's wait to find out that we're getting certainty on his situation. I don't know. That's sort of how I'm playing it.
I like it.
And then next up, we have Cedric Tillman, and he gets the Underdog red note that he will be a starter this year. Up spots. Like who'd you come on. Is Deontay Johnson still there? Like I'm not even confident that he's going to be a major player for Cleveland this year based on what we saw. The Underdog red note's a classic though. It's a classic.
I love it. And I think, that could be a little bit of it. I also think if you just like filter on wide receiver, scroll to where he is in the ADP, so it's like 147, it's just a dead zone. Filter on wide receiver. I think it actually illustrates it really well.
Absolutely. You have to bump him up. It's him, like
if you're chasing receiver, it's so Hollywood Brown 132, then Jack Besh and Tillman are at 147. And Besh is falling right now, right? And Tillman, I guess, gets a guy I need to fill out my roster. I don't know what to do here. You draft him, right? It's almost like you just like don't want to get caught without a guy. So it's I think it's a function of how the draft lays out as more than it is like the guy being like someone to target.
That's true. There's that. I am a Cedric Tillman guy with 26.7%. Not gonna pretend I'm not. I do like the range of outcomes that he provides, but Quentin Johnson, I've also been starting to mix in more. Now I'm actually willing to bring in some Leggett as well. Cause you're right. Like once Hollywood Brown's off the board, I'm not clicking too much Jack Bash. I've been drafting him as he's been falling right now. Trying to get at least my average ADP a little better, but we don't like, I think Bash falls behind Palmer and Dobbs pretty quickly. So what's your thoughts on this three, Tillman, Quinn Johnson, and Leggett for this range?
Tillman's a good pick. He's going to be out there running routes. Joe Flacco is going to be good for him. QJ, I like him as like a continuing ascending player, right? Like,
yeah,
he came out rough and has got a little bit better last year. And like, who says they can't do it again? So like, not opposed to either of those, drafting either of those guys is what I've been thinking. And Leggett, like, I don't know, like, yeah, yeah.
It's same. No, I like actually, when I see the other two, I'm just like, let me just do this. I'd rather draft like Coker at the end, but now we are getting some positive news out of camp that he does look good. He looks fast. He's big. Those are all good things, right? And Carolina, we expect him to have to throw the ball. And you want to know what's interesting is like, and this isn't even on here, but like Rico Dowdle's ADP is so far down the board. He's becoming one of my favorite clicks. Speaking about just Carolina, I don't think there's a real reason why he should go behind Rashawn Johnson. Posted 1,000 yards last year. It is a little out of control. I think his ADP being that far down, but that's just a little nugget for you guys that made it this far into the video. Chiggy up a couple spots, and Brashad Smith. This is very negligible. I mean, 2.7 in this range of the draft. Looks like Chiggy did get some positive coach peak, which is good. What do you think about Chig in Tennessee?
I think it's just like a little bit of, I don't know, like it's what's causing it is more of just like wanting to draft late tight ends. I think it's like popular right now. And so therefore, if you're waiting to, it's at that range, it means it's kind of like he's being drafted 100% of the time, which I would say is about true. So
yeah,
I think that's really what the function is of why that's happening. But do you see anything else?
No, you're probably right with that. It's minimal coach speak, but yeah, I like the click. He's like a 3 tight end type build player, anyways. So
totally.
I don't think he's gonna pass like Gesicki. So there's really not a whole lot there. Brashad Smith, people are just looking for the RB2 here in KC. I'm a little worried because of how busy it is. Like, I'll take my shots on Pacheco, and I mean, they're going to use multiple backs after they find who their number one is. And even then, if you have your number one, like, they're still going to mix in a good amount of backs here anyways.
Yeah, I every year will watch a couple highlight videos, and it's like the worst thing for me because of the fact
Guilty.
That, I'm not like a avid highlight watcher, so I don't see avid like tape watcher, so I don't see everything, and I can't like make a quality judgment on everyone. I mostly use stats. Rashard Smith, yes. I did watch his tape. That's a fun tape to watch. Like his last year, he had so many touchdowns and stuff. So like I've always been drafting him for a while. So I have like a pretty solid exposure. If he continues to creep up, I'll let it cool off a little bit. I think there's hope that he is like could take over in Kansas City. It's a pretty thin room ahead of him, especially if Pacheco is not the dude anymore. So like,
yeah,
I could see it. He's a pass catcher, and if he can get some decent chunk of the running game, then it would be dump offs and kind of like he actually runs real routes. So like, I don't know. I think he's an interesting click, but I'll let it creep up as I have my bags packed.
Yeah, and if you expect positive news too, this is the time to be drafting these guys where you think their ADPs could fly up come training camp, right? In mid-July, So you want to take those stands on, hey, I think Brashard Smith could actually get a ton of positive coach speak, and he'll be in the 150s, 140s. Like, where's his player's ceiling if they get the news you're expecting? Everyone has their favorites in this range too. Like, you have this is like the Jarquez Hunter, the Giddens range. Like, everyone's taking their shots on some of these rookies, and I think you'd actually be silly not to. So he's just another one of those guys that I think you should be taking shots on. Besh down. I think people were just a little too excited about the potential wide receiver 2 here in Vegas, but I think people found out that he's probably not going to be the guy that's in 2 wide receiver sets, and there's a little overreaction to where his ADP rose up to. Also, Genty taking work, Bowers, Myers. There's a fight for targets on Vegas.
Yeah, I think I've been thinking about rookies, and we know it's gonna go. What happens is people get really excited because they get that early ADP value, and then they're gonna fall back a little bit. But unless they have that positive coach speak, and then they go really high up the board.
Yes.
So it's majority of the time they're going to fall, but when they do rise, they rise a lot. So he's in the majority of the time in a fall group, kind of doing what we expect him to do. It's unfortunate, but yeah, I don't know. I think that they have 2 guys ahead of him that will be getting targets, and actually, if you think about the running back, 3 guys, they're going to be the primary guys getting the ball. So, what is best case scenario that he is the 4th option on that team? Not what you're looking for.
Exactly. We just showed that wide receiver range, and there are some options I think have some higher upside for big games. Pat Fry and Jonnu, both as fallers. We have the trade of Jonnu going to Pittsburgh. It came true, which is surprising. I don't know. I have mixed feelings. I have not been drafting Jonnu, and I haven't been drafting Pat Fry up until Rodgers went to Pittsburgh. I'm like, oh God, I need to catch up on my Pat Fry. So I think I actually got up to 7% on him, and now they're both going to take a tumble. Maybe we can check the range on Jonnu Smith here.
If you are kind of heavily exposed to Freiermuth, you're not getting smoked because he was never that expensive. So he's going from 15th, 14th, whatever he was going to now last round pick. Still draftable. Jonnu's the one that takes a big hit. Maybe you could consider him as their wide receiver 2, but I don't know. He's just what are they going to do? Run two tight ends all the time? I just don't understand how that works. But we did see him be pretty productive as Kyle Pitts number 2. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. And we found out that was Kyle Pitts. And not, you know what I mean? It was Kyle Pitts not being a true number 1 being the problem. Jonnu's falling. I'm maybe we luck into this 4.7% because I started to catch up before, as he was falling past Ingram. I'm like, okay, this is the range that I like Jonnu in. And then, he actually goes to Pittsburgh, behind Warren, behind Njoku, behind Kraft, behind Loveland, probably behind Goddard, behind Jake Ferguson. I think he goes in this Kyle Pitts range. Kyle Pitts to Hunter Henry, even Gesicki, somewhere in this range is where I expect Johnny to. And they could run a shit ton of 2 wide receiver sets because they don't really have a true number 2 wide receiver unless Roman Wilson can be the guy I thought he was going to be last year, and which would kind of just mess with me for this year.
And that would still be him being the wide receiver 2. They got DK Metcalf,
right?
And Calvin Austin. It's not like he needs to be on the field.
Exactly.
So how are you with your Miami exposure in general? Did you play this correctly in terms of HN Tyreek Waddle?
Oh, let's just do a
Hold
little.
up. That is so creepy. I did not like that.
The thing is, I like these guys based on their ADP prior to any Pittsburgh bullshit rumors coming out. I didn't even think that was going to happen. There's a small risk when you hear it. There's a small risk, and you should adapt. Or you could take the risk of them falling and you grab that ADP value. So if it never happens, there's multiple ways to play it. None is correct or wrong, I should say. 17% Waddle. Love the ADP, the range. This has some of Tyreek Hill baked into it as well, in my opinion. Like just shit going south there, whether it's on the field or off the field. Nate Chan, I think, is one of the better clicks in the second round. I'm at 14.5%, which is pretty heavy for me for a second round player.
So no Tyreek or limited Tyreek?
Hill's very low. Hill is at 4%, but I'm willing to mix him in a whole lot more now. I don't think it really changes too much for Tyreek. Like Jonnu not being there, sure. I think those targets help more so Waddle and HN.
Makes sense. Yeah, I'm on 58 drafts this summer, so not as much volume as you do, but got 13% HN, 19% Tyreek, and 22% Waddle. So pretty excited about this team so far. A little too much Jonnu, but what can you do?
What are your thoughts on? Tua goes so late, and especially for a season that we've seen him have pretty good success in fantasy football. You bumping him down at all, or is it just kind of like I have Waddle, I have HN, I have Hill, I have one of the three or two? I'm just drafting Tua as much as I can with those combos.
No, I don't bump him down. Not really. Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about, so they're going to condense the targets more, I guess, is what the assumption is, and they're moving off a tight end and moving those targets out of Johnny, who we like as an athlete, but I think HN, Tyreek, and Waddle are better athletes. So wheels up, let's everything. I don't know. I've been excited about the Dolphins individually and in the aggregate this summer, so this is kind of great news. And Johnny was my weakest of them targets, so that's really excited right now.
And you heard what happened today, right? For tight end in Miami.
Yeah, Darren Waller. How funny is that? So the first thing I did was check if he was in the player pool, which he is. Good for Underdog for putting him in the player pool. But that is funny. In baseball, so I play a fair amount of the Underdog baseball as well. Stacking Diggers, come watch us. But there's multiple players in the major leagues right now that were not in the player pool because they weren't expected to make it because of prospects.
Yes.
But good for them for having Waller. They have the foresight to know that he could come back.
So funny. So I think there's a pretty good advantage to if you still have some hound dogs or whatever contests that have closed and you're doing slows, it's the perfect time to add in a little last round pick, Darren Waller right now. It might be a little too early to add him, but in those contests, the $3, the $5, the $6, the $7, whatever, the contests that have filled in players, drafters don't have a chance to add him. Why not? Why not mix him in third tight end?
I don't know, it's kind of joking, but Darren Waller looks good. Why not? Realistically, and tell me why not. He was a great fantasy player when he was healthy.
Remember when the last couple of years of his career, he was getting so much positive buzz in training camp. And it was because he was cooking the Giants defense, which just sucked. It was just, it just wasn't. And that's what it ended up being. It wasn't that he was actually doing all that well towards the end of his career. But I guess he was rapping for a little bit, right? Well, didn't he turn to rapping?
It was just some sort of music. I don't know if it was rap or punk rock. I don't know what it was, but it was not a good look.
It didn't. It didn't work. It didn't work. The bro's back. And Nick Chubb falling in this 180 range. Fine.
That's an interesting chart, actually, because if you look at it, it's people. There's the news. He was a nothing. You didn't draft him at all. Then there was the news that he's relevant. Actually, just go ahead and take off Joe Mixon. I think it's probably easier to show it. Joe Mixon had a little decrease when he joined, but
It's very
so
slight.
yeah, very slight. Chubb, though, people got really excited and started to chase him up the board because we didn't know what the true ceiling of his ADP was. He hit that plateau and kind of fell back a little bit. And I think this is the actual true price. You probably you had a good bit of people that were paying a little over, but then a bunch of people got in good as well.
Right. And even here for the 30-day, it looks like he's been falling since about June 24th. So about a week here.
Yeah, for sure.
Let me see. Just kind of curious where we have Chubb ranked. Yeah, I had him at 180, so I feel really good. I haven't changed the ranks in about 10 days, so new one's coming out tonight. Check for it tomorrow if you guys are subscribed to the Patreon, any tier, or the Max on YouTube memberships for the ranks. Got to adjust the Miami tight end, Pat Fry, put Darren Waller at pick 237. This shit like that. Kyle Williams, last guy on the list. People are just kind of waiting a little bit for New England. Who's going to be the wide receiver 2? Is Booty still alive? Is Polk still alive? And Polk's been dropping balls. Javon Baker's been dropping balls. We'll see about training camp. I still have let's say my confidence rates like 82% that Kyle Williams will ascend as the wide receiver 2 this season.
That's actually pretty high. I mean, if that's the case, then you should be way on him, right?
But not right out the gate. I don't think he starts as the wide receiver 2. I think he ascends towards the mid, maybe week 7, week 8. I would expect around that range is when he starts to add in more snaps. But I don't know how much of I don't know if he'll be a good advance rate guy, but I think towards the playoffs, he potentially could provide that, especially if you do get towards the late season and Diggs has an injury. A couple of these guys are going to end up eating. So there's a little insurance on Diggs there too. And I'm super high on the Diggs ADP because I think he can be one of the biggest risers in August.
Yeah, I like that take. I've been in on Diggs because of that take, so I hope you're right.
Jeez. Yeah. Do you think Kyle Williams just continues to fall until we get some positive news and maybe see it in training camp? Who's taking
I
what
think
reps?
Why do rookies fall? Because it's projection season, and the rookies are going to project for a season long perspective low. So it's just kind of how it plays out. So he's kind of projecting lower than players in his range. But now it's going to let the low fall, get him at the low point, and then right before training camp starts, that's when he's going to come back.
Yeah, it's really tough for me to put him behind. If you want to get him into a fair range, it'd be the mid 130s behind Hollywood Brown, but we're talking 10 picks. It's not a whole lot if you think there's upside there for the end of the season. All right, let's transfer over to the second portion of the show. I'll put on your analysis. You can just give a little brief background of what the people are looking at.
Yeah, so I actually did this last year. So if any of the information on there is stale, I'm sorry. I think at one point I talked about the last 3 BBMs, and this was referencing last year. But anyways, so one thing I liked it was trying to think through the different strategies, and there's something called a SWOT analysis where you look through a concept and you think about the strengths, the potential weaknesses of it, what are opportunities that it provides for you, and what are threats of where it could go wrong. So I did this with some of the more popular strategies that we see deployed in best ball contests, and I thought it was an interesting way to talk about the pros and the cons and what we should be trying to do with each of these.
Absolutely. So the first build on the plate here is Hyperfragile running backs.
Yeah, so Hyperfragile running back, investing a lot in running back, kind of not drafting many of them. So from a draft capital perspective, you're still aligned, but you're getting elite guys on your roster. This is probably going to look something like 2-5-8-3 or something like that. That math works, right?
Yeah, and for the true sickos, they stop at like 4 RBs within, pick 120.
Yeah, like where you'd go 3 in your first 4 rounds or something like that.
Which we've seen to actually have negative advance rates. Like it has positive advance rates for weeks 1 through 14. Then it had that same Hyperfragile with 4 running backs showed negative advance rates in the playoff weeks, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, so it can definitely work, but it's tougher to kind of build around. So from like a strengths perspective, why does Hyperfragile work? It works because the top tier running backs can go nuts and really separate. Fantasy scoring is heavily dependent on touchdowns and getting touches, and running backs are going to be handed the ball off. So we're pretty sure we're going to get it in their hands that way. And around the goal line, it's how teams typically try to score. So that touchdown and touch equity is really something that we're looking for. It also allows for you to if you're drafting high quality running backs but less of them, and properly building your team, you're going to be able to put more volume on these other positions that you're weaker at. So by like leaning into Hyperfragile and being aggressive with it, you do have an opportunity to kind of get really unique with the combination of players that are hitting your roster.
Right, and it's really hard to go Hyperfragile, right? You're grabbing these early running backs to only stop at 4 or 5, but it's also hard when you do that to go like an elite QB or to go an elite tight end. That makes your wide receiver room look usually like crap. Like you're drafting at least 8 or 9 at that point. If you're going 2 RBs through 4 rounds and you're adding in an elite tight end or elite QB, what are your thoughts on that type of building? Do you tend to stay away from that? Are you trying to catch up at receiver as much as possible when you do Hyperfragiles, or should we be testing the waters more with elite QB and tight end?
Well, that's a great segue into the weaknesses section that I had kind of called out here. So, 2 of the weaknesses for Hyperfragile, which I called out, were one, that running backs, ignoring this as a last year, typically have a pretty high injury rate, right? Last season, our elite guys stayed healthy and scored for you, but historically, there was multiple guys a year that would miss time and boost a guy from later that was just going to get opportunity that we were banking on. Additionally, another weakness for Hyperfragile is that you're going to be missing out on the elite wide receivers, and wide receiver can get thin quickly, as you mentioned, especially if we're tacking on more than just running back detours. If we're going elite, they're doing this kind of strategy with early investment in quarterback or tight end. Like your running back room or your wide receiver room is going to be really thin. So like, you gotta be conscious of it. I don't think you can. I don't know. We see people do it all the time on Twitter, but like, no names, but we all know who I'm talking about. But like, it's a really hard build to complete if you're going to prioritize running back, but also not prioritize wide receiver at the same time.
I certainly agree there. I will say with Gritty, he does attack wide receiver usually in the first round, right? So he's still building it around an elite receiver. So an interesting nuance to that type build, which I think is important and hitting on the late guys, which is how it works.
I think if you're going to do it, you got to know that your wide receivers are weak, and you've got to be intentional about it. You got to get volume so you can get your floor base scoring, but you also need some level of upside too. You're kind of like building it in the aggregate through numbers rather than building it through quality.
Right. Yeah, and there are a lot of receivers this year are pushed back just because. So maybe it makes it even a worse year to go hyperfragile because the RBs are more expensive. I've been actually switching over to being a 0 RB type bro as of late because I found myself doing less of those types of builds. Being able to track that for myself on Best Ball Overlay has helped me quite a bit. What do you like for opportunities here? Is it worth still doing hyperfragiles? I know you did a lot of the advanced rate analysis too for these builds.
I mean, if done right, we've seen it win tournaments for sure. It absolutely provides that ceiling in playoff rounds if you build your team kind of in a way that fits the full roster. Additionally, as you said, like there are seasons where 0 RB is the thing, and there's seasons where it's hero RB. In as of last year, Hyperfragile was like completely banned, outlawed, essentially. Like if you did it, you were shunned, right? Like and now it's come back for sure, but it's still definitely on the more like fringy side, especially if you're doing like 3 through 6 kind of build. So there still is like a uniqueness component if you're leaning into a strategy like this. So it's definitely an opportunity there.
I love doing my hyperfragiles personally with 5, maybe 2 through 4 rounds. Yeah, I think it's really hard to go 3. If you get a crazy fall, you can try it. But I like 5 RBs, obviously not overspending too much, grabbing your favorite RB in that 120 to 150 range, whoever your favorite guy is that you think can either ascend or there's a high chance of injury to the starter, and then pair that with your favorite last round guy. So you sometimes will hit on those guys in the 120s to 150s or that guy in the 180s to 200s, and you pair it with the strength of those 2 guys you picked in the first 4 rounds. I think that's how you really make a strong hyperfragile team when you're right.
Yeah, for sure. And that when you're right point is a great point. And that's a key threat when this hyperfragile team. Like you're drafting 4 or 5 running backs and you're expecting 1 or 2 of them to like really hold down the fort. Like if that guy is a miss and he underperforms, like your team is like really struggling at that point. You don't have like the guys that be able to like build out the room in aggregate. So if you I don't know who's a guy in the second round last year that was very underwhelming. I don't know. JT kind of was that way for most of the season, then he hit late, but like
and then he popped.
Then he popped, but like if you expected him to like support your roster and he's just he wasn't that dude,
right?
Then you're kind of fighting back.
Right. Yeah, you're definitely leaning into those early guys hitting. That's a major factor to this one working. And I think we covered the threats.
Yeah. So I have 0 RV, which is kind of the opposite of this conversation. So we can go and skip that one just in terms of time.
Okay. Yeah, that works.
Let's do elite tight end, and we can also think of this and some of these examples for elite quarterback too. There's the onesies have similar principles. Do you want to talk about elite tight end, or do you want to talk about like punting tight end? It's the same conversation, both sides.
Yeah, elite tight end. Where do you draw the line on elite tight end? Is this up to Kittle? Is it up to Laporta in like the 80s? I sort of have it. I would have it at Kittle probably the latest.
It's definitely Kittle. I mean, like we did our quarterback tiers previously, and we did our tight end tiers. It's like you get 1, and then the 1A, right? Like, so I think that's probably what you're thinking about. It is like Kittle is the line, and this is like really relevant to last year where we had like the elite tight end was a very squishy conversation last year, and there's a lot of guys that were really pushed up the board. But yeah, so probably we're in terms of this conversation this year, we'll think of it as in like Kittle and Bowers and McBride.
I like it. Yeah, they're falling definitely to better prices right now. I've scooped McBride almost close to the 30s a few times, even in just the last 2 days. So I don't know if people are as excited about elite tight ends just based on how much it's failed in the last 2 years.
Yeah, for sure. So, elite tight end, one of the strengths of elite tight end is that like it can be pretty top heavy, and especially in terms of like
Yeah.
spikes, they're concentrated around certain guys. Um, Tight ends, even if they're elites, still have plenty of duds. I think that's a key weakness to this strategy
It's
as
true.
well. Like they just have what's more. That's the elite guys are just more volatile. It's not that they have the super consistency. If you like. We have seen elite tight ends be key components of winning rosters, having like
True.
average advance rates or good advance rates sometimes, but also if they do lap the field, but then also a key if the average or if most tight ends are duds and you get having your opponents have sixes to eights on their roster hitting the lineup and you have a 25. I mean, it is a significant advantage to have your elite
Oh
tight
yeah.
end hit the
Yeah.
roster in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So it is. We have seen it very powerful. And this like
Yeah.
last three best ball manias, you can see
Yeah.
this is
And,
a prior
and
note.
and part of the strength is obviously like these tight ends have access to a higher ceiling than the mid and late tier guys. The mid and late tier guys typically can't hit that 26, 25 point game, even with 2 touchdowns. Now, there's a few guys I think can compete in that range that are in the hundreds, 90s to 100. But the strengths are really a little sketchy for me for elite tight end. Now you get the
Mm-hmm.
consistency through the the playoff weeks, which you're hoping that they don't take a day off, which we know tight ends can be spotty. I think the last time we saw a really good elite tight end season was what, 2-3 years ago, Mark Andrews, when he popped off and finished as tight end 1. That's really the last time. But this kind of goes right into the weaknesses as well, as like if you're going elite tight end, your structure has to stop it too, right? So you have less chances to hit on that guy that goes late that is just worth way more than where he goes, right? You have that Jonnu Smith type year, and if you're only drafting 2, you're less likely to make a build that includes Jonnu Smith. If you own 3, you're taking more late bullets and you're finding that upside guy. And that's sort of the reason why I like the 3 is due to just more bullets on these guys that have high upside. Gesicki even had, I think Gesicki had a 30-point game last year as well.
Yeah, and like ultimately, this game is about scoring the most points, and running backs and wide receivers score the most points. Then quarterbacks also quarterbacks actually score the most points, but like points over replacement isn't there. But so
Mm-hmm.
tight ends are on the lowest man on the totem pole here. If they can separate, that's awesome. But
Yes.
it's there's a note here
It's
as well.
also
Like
based on range, right?
yeah,
Are other players separating that are other positions in that range? That kind of
yeah,
negates the advantage.
exactly. And the if you're drafting an elite tight end, you're likely to go 2. If you go 3, that means you put someone your most important capital to a tight end, and then you're also tacking on 2. Oh my gosh! Did you hear that? I
Yeah,
just
what
like
the hell?
that was the thunderstorm. I literally just jumped. Oh my gosh! But anyways,
Good, good. All right,
oh
could
my
have been.
gosh!
All right,
Oh my
wasn't a
gosh!
car
But
into the
anyways,
house.
no, definitely not. Then we still have power. But it's just like if you're if you're gonna go 2 and then your elite guy doesn't hit your lineup, you're really thin. So like
Yes.
I don't know. You definitely are drafting to be right, but you don't. I hate to draft to only win one way, and that's what it feels like with elite tight end.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you're still gonna have. It's hard to completely fade if you're like completely out on Bowers. Like I'm sorry, but like
Mm-hmm.
you have no fun in your life. You gotta have a little Bowers. And even I'm not big on Bowers in the second round. I probably have 4%. Trey McBride is one that falls to the 30s quite a bit, like 29, 28. I tack that on quite a bit. And then Kittle is someone I arguably need a shit ton more of because I think he's the perfect price mixed with elite ceiling. So opportunities here, having that ceiling to have a 30-point game and really impact if you can get that to land in a week 17.
Absolutely. So yeah, the opposite side of this conversation is the late round tight end. So we'll kind of just move through that. And then
Yeah,
another
right,
thing that I
right.
put together was team and game stacking. So what stacking we know we want to draft multiple people from the same team. What's awesome about this, when you win big. Quarterback throws the ball to the wide receiver, double touchdown right there. Your team
Yeah.
absolutely the game goes for an absolute shootout. One team goes for 40, the other team has to chase. They only get 28, but that's 4 touchdowns. Like there's a lot of like benefits when it all is this like correlated nature.
Yeah, and the stats show to make correlated bets, right? And making a bet on a single game blowing up is correlated, and we've seen it work in DFS, and we've seen it work in best ball. So the stats, the data sort of supports the game stacking, and that's why the craze is, week 17 game stacks right now.
Yeah, for sure. And so the flip side of that is when if you overstack, you're building in like lesser ways for you to win. And as we don't want to have to do a million, we don't have to have this massive parlay. But if you do this big bet and you draft like some great players around it, but your big bet is wrong, like your team is really fighting back. So it's like this push pull between like,
Yeah,
if I'm right, I'm really right, but if I'm wrong, I
yeah,
could nuke a great draft as
yeah,
well. So kind of got to know
absolutely.
what you're doing with it. So that there's the two sides of the coin.
Absolutely. And this sort of brings me back to my MMG team that finished in second place last year in one of the major contests. I had T. Higgs, which sort of just, Chase didn't have a big game. You get the leverage there with T. Higgins. He blows up. You have Burrow, and now you're on your way to, between the two, it was over 60 points. So stacking still
Mm-hmm.
very important. There's also a way to leverage the elite players with your game stacks as well.
Yeah, and another weakness of the stacking concept is that because people know to stack, your combinations of certain players are going to be much greater than random. Actually, DraftKings just released their data of players already
Yes.
drafted. I cannot believe they did that.
Yes.
Talk about a
Yeah.
JV website. Oh my god. But anyways, the I'm going to use it, of course, in a draft
You
with the
have to.
knowledge, but
You
like you
have
have to.
to.
But like, oh my god. But anyways,
To see
certain
the combinations,
combinations
ownership.
and all of it, like, but certain combinations are going to be like significantly higher because they align on the draft board, and then you want to build around a certain game. So that's a weakness to it. Like if you just kind of like I'm going to stack, well, other people are like I'm going to stack too, and
Yeah.
you got to just
Right.
be intelligent around it, or you're going to get yourself not necessarily duped, but like you're going to be fighting upstream if you think you got like a great stack. Well, I'm sure you other people got that the Bengals double
Yeah.
with a Cardinals bring back.
That
Like,
falls right in line with ADP.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah. And actually knowing the ownership there is a huge, huge advantage. Right. If
Mm-hmm.
35% of Chase teams have, T. Higgins and Trey McBride, or T. Higgins and Marv, like it does make it a little less appetizing, but you still want a certain percent, though. I would argue you just want to make sure it's not 75% of your chase teams are tied to Trey McBride, and that's where the combination ownership tool live in the draft room for bestballover.com. That's how I balance my portfolio as I draft, and it's been absolutely huge for me. I don't know what I would do because I don't keep track of my stuff off site through Excel, so it's really
Mm-hmm.
helped.
Yeah, for sure. Um, we already kind of talked on the opportunities. Some interesting threats is certain players are definitely boosted by like other players. Just think Miami, right? They're absolute dust without Tua. So and Tua's really late. So like if you have a Miami piece, and I think it's like the most obvious stack to kind of just throw on your team if you've already kind of built it, just because when they're good, it's because he's good, and the rest of the roster is just kind of largely useless without him. So um, you have these players that are just very much driven by the other guys on the roster.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so that's stacking, and then I did drafting early versus drafting late. Now we kind of missed the drafting early conversation. We're in like the middle range, so I think it's interesting if we talk drafting late. So one of the big advantages of drafting late is we know what's happened in the tournament already. We have a good feel for what's likely to be pretty chalky, and we can actually build unique teams off of that. As well as drafting late, we have a huge set of information. We've had the whole summer to analyze. You have this like wisdom of the crowds actually starts to converge as the tournament has 600,000 entrants in it at that point. And then we have
especially in the terms of BBM, right? Where it's like this contest is open for 4 months, right? And you have those contests that are like the short term. And we're talking about this off stream, like the ones that are the time box contests that are only open for a week, 2 weeks. So you always have the opportunity. Pitbull right now, that's like drafting early for that contest. And we talked about kind of thinking of your portfolio as a whole, not just in terms of these little contests that, I have 20 entries. Well, I'm just going to draft them and try to draft the best team. And then you end up looking at your exposures later. I don't know how you can't on Underdog, but to find your combinational ownerships, like you want to make sure that you're hitting those stacks still, right? Even in those time box contests, because they add up. The BBM is only 150.
Yeah, and you have like so many levers that we can actually pull, like here, and if we can draft like one or two unique combos, or making sure that I really want this in my portfolio and being intentional about that. Like, you shouldn't like these these like time box competitions still count towards that overall building your portfolio of combinations and players throughout the summer.
But I do think it's important to separate as well. And that's sort of what this analysis is so great for. It's like when the contest opened, you were looking for certain advantages, whether it's ADP or maybe ADP or projected ADP, where these guys are either going to rise or fall. Now the drafting middles, like the information lull, and then late, which we're at right now. I do think it's interesting. It's when I'm going to try to do the majority of my drafts is training camp and after, and it's gonna be hard, but I'm probably gonna do around 400 to 500 drafts in late July and August. So I'm gonna be in these streets. So watch out. But you have the information of training camp, who's taking what snaps, what players haven't been drafted yet, the player movement, where have these guys been, where have they gone, what combinations were possible, whether they rose or fall. Not all fallers are ballers from my boys out there. But how do you kind of divvy out your drafts between early, middle, and late for the BBM season? Or what's ideal?
That's a good question, right? Because you have like what is optimal. I think you have like the really early drafts, which are really awesome, and then you have the middle range, which seems like don't have a huge value outside of like your ability to draft. I'm not going to say there's no value. It's during this time of the year, you're actually able to get in quality drafts rather than rushing late to gain some advantage of knowledge, but you're rushing because you're having to do 20 at a time to get to the volume that you want. So that actually kind of brings me to the next, like the weaknesses section, right? So in the late drafts, the weaknesses, I see kind of two primary ones is if you have missed out on certain things. Players have fallen and you're going to be able to get good prices on them, but that's because typically we don't want them anymore. But there are going to be people that have rose, and some where the price won't really matter that much. But there's some that will be like, used to be free and now are annoyingly expensive kind of players, and you will miss that. So it's just kind of, you have to be somewhat knowledgeable. That doesn't mean you can't draft them. You're not having to compete against them in the first round, but you do want to kind of like just have as a conscious while you're building.
Clear
Additionally,
example.
like Go ahead.
I was just gonna like, would you end up with 25% Dobbins if you started drafting with his ADP being 126? Probably not, unless you expect him to rise more. Possible.
Exactly.
But he was in the 180s, 190s.
Yeah. Another weakness for drafting late is, like, as you said, if you're going to try to jam it in all late, you have no option. Like, if you want to start early and being like, I'm going to get it all in early, and you miss, you just draft it a little bit later in the year.
Mm-hmm.
If you're consistent throughout the summer and you're not pacing where you want to be, you just kind of pick it up for a short window of time and you get back on pace. If you want to draft 400 in the last whatever
40
2
days,
weeks,
10 a day.
40 days, 10 a day, and you have a bad 2 days of like your personal life, like you're gonna be chasing after that point. So I think you just have to. It's like, you know, he's like, it's gonna happen, dude. Like
over
book
under
that
3.5.
So like that's something that you're gonna have to kind of battle back, and you might be giving up. You might have like information EV, but you might be giving up quality EV
True.
in that window. So just it is a thing. Great opportunity for that window is you get people that just want to play fantasy football. You don't have as many sickos, not as many badges, and so therefore, like, you're gonna be able to, against like a weaker crowd, more casuals. I hate the term just because it's like it feels derogatory, but it's more. It's just like people that aren't as informed as any grinders.
Yeah, and there's definitely there's a certain amount of an edge there when people are new to best ball, and I'd actually argue to put this into strengths too. Is with those newcomers coming in, best ball is not regular fantasy football, so I don't know how you want to equate the advantage, but like the I'm better than you at fantasy football type talk is like, okay, like what's your edge? Is it 20%? Is it 30%? And then. Yeah, no, it's definitely there though. The newcomers, you see the people during even July come in, and the badge lists are here to take your player stacks.
Yeah, absolutely. Late drafts give you like an opportunity to avoid injuries, which is great. But I also do find that late drafts, some of like the deep sleepers that you used to love, no longer exist. Like we were talking Brashard Smith in the ADP earlier. He's in the last round or so. If he has a good training camp, he's moving up the draft board. Pacheco's probably still draftable, and you're not like losing Hunt off of it. So it's just someone rises up, and likely you're kind of getting rid of someone who's no longer relevant. So the player pool definitely, I feel like, condenses a little bit.
Yeah, no, avoiding zeros is another major advantage.
Mm-hmm.
During training camp. Those training camp ACLs, Tim Patrick, back-to-back years.
Yeah, and then if you do jam, one final thread as we kind of wrap up is you do jam in 440 days, ADP's not moving on you. So if you're just kind of playing a market-based game, you're not getting as unique at combos as you would if you're playing a market-based game across multiple months where the market's moving. So you do just have to be intentional with moving guys up and down rather than just kind of like letting them fall in your lap.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Crushed it. Went through 59 minutes. Awesome work. Appreciate the visuals. Guys, if you haven't already, give Billy a follow at SportsVizBJ, Billy Jones on the Twitter machine. If you guys enjoy this type of content, hit the like and subscribe button. Billy, the floor is yours, sir. What do you got for the people?
It's a good question. I don't know what I'm doing next. I guess that's a good point. If you got ideas, let me know. Recently, I've been doing some like what was it? I did an update to Justin Herzig's like data set, where I have multiple years of advance rates now. Like, part of me wants to kind of start trolling people, but then I'm like, they're going to troll me back. And that's what I don't want. I want to be like I want to have friends online. So
I love it.
I don't know. If you have ideas for things to research, let me know. If not, I'll just be drafting.
I like it. Yeah, you'll catch us both in a draft room soon. Do not take my late night EV, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Pounders.